Good morning. Welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke, and today is the 21st of February. For some reason, I'm thinking it's the 20th because I don't know what day it is anymore. But yes, it is Friday, the 21st of February. And Joanne is on already, says happy Friday. And so happy Friday to you as well. And yeah, it's a nice day, and we had some snow last night. But it is, I think it was kind of a surprise because I think we were first told we were going to get 17 inches, and then we were told nothing, and then it's not a lot, it's not a big deal, and I noticed the town hasn't done anything, so I think they're just assuming it's going to melt because it is going to warm up. Next week is going to be more normal temperature-wise, so I'm actually looking forward to that because, frankly, like a lot of people here, I think I'm just totally done. I think I'm totally done with. I'm kind of done with winter weather at this point. I don't necessarily enjoy like the real intense heat of summer, but it would be nice to move to spring. Of course, spring is going to be, it's interesting. A little American bluebird just came. The tree across from me has all these holes in it, and it's just funny watching them. They stick their little heads in and their little butts are sticking out, and they kind of like move around. And sometimes while I'm sitting here doing the live stream, they kind of do all this funny stuff on there. So it's kind of interesting. Yes, and Suda's on. Good morning. Good to see you. Yeah, it's okay. So we are closing in on the end of February. We've got, I guess, we've got like a week, maybe 8 more. Yeah, but a week from today is going to be the last day of February. So it's kind of crazy when you think about it. So I can tell you folks that I got off the live stream yesterday at 8:30 and I had my breakfast, and then I immediately sat down to work on my taxes. Yay. Really feel like giving my money away at this point, but I decided, okay, let me sit down and do them. I had already done about 3 hours of prep work because when you work for yourself, I mean, I do have a job where I get paid. Oh, and Alex is on. Good morning, Alex. When you have a job with the W-2, that's pretty straightforward. You look at the, you see how much, if you owe any tax, and if so, maybe you need to put in your W-4 and make an adjustment. But when you work for yourself and you have numerous income streams, then it's like, okay, you've got to pull all your 1099s together and everything from people, and and see what needs to be reported, what doesn't need to be reported, because not everything does need to be reported. So, if I've made $5 on from Ingram over the year, I don't need to report that. It's like it's not even worth adding to the thing, but in any case, I went through all of that, and it took me from about 8:45 to almost 2:00 to get through my taxes. And that is I do my own taxes. I do not hire an accountant. And maybe people think, oh, hiring an accountant would be better. Maybe not. I just find that I can work through it myself. My motto yesterday was WWBCD. Okay, which is what would Bob Chesum do? And Bob Chesum, of course, was the very first accountant I ever worked with as an adult. He was the family accountant. He was accountant for our family, and he did die. He had died fairly young, actually. I think he was in his 60s. I mean, young for him. And I'd always respected Bob because Bob would come to the house. He never overcharged, and he would. And when I had cats, I remember when he came into a house where I had kittens. The kittens kept running all over him, and he had like a bald spot in his head, and the cat was like trying to look at itself. And I was just like, oh my God. And he was just like, oh no, it's fine. I have cats. It's totally cool. I always kind of judge people who come into my house when I had cats as to how they treated my cats. Because if you treat my cats like crap, then I'm not doing any business with you. Because I did have an insurance guy who came in once who kind of like pushed them out of the way with his foot, like he was disgusted by them. And I was like, well, you know what? Then I'm not buying insurance from you. Go away. So yeah, I do kind of have that thing. So yes. Anyway, he was a nice guy, and the reason I say that is because himself, when he died, his wife took over the business, and then there was another guy who used to come around. And again, I used to go to my mother's house, and we used to do it there. But I've been doing it on my own for years because I don't see any reason to pay $250, $300 to somebody for something that I can figure out myself. But it is a nuisance. You do have to sit down And then you have to think about, it's the itemized deduction game. Like how many, am I really representing what I've actually spent on business expenses this year? Because you keep certain receipts and then you have certain things in a spreadsheet, and then you have to go back and go, well, wait a minute, I forgot about this. I forgot about this. Every year I always forget about things. And Sam is on. Hello, good morning / afternoon. I feel like I always forget something. Usually it's like my phone. My phone probably at this point is 60 to 70% business use. And even if you don't claim a home office deduction, you are allowed to claim that. So I had to go back over last year's and I went, oh, that's right. I can claim this and I can claim this, because just somehow I have amnesia about what I can claim. Anyway, long story short, through making sure that I had all my deductions, I went from owing, I think I was going to owe something close to $1,000. And in the end, I only owed $15. And I got money back from the state of New Jersey. I got almost $200 back from the state of New Jersey. And the income that I'd predicted for my self-employment health insurance, because New Jersey will subsidize it to a certain point. If you get the number wrong, you're going to owe. And I happened to get the number exactly right. And I was like, me and my intuitive accounting. When I managed with the end, when I saw what the number was, I was like, okay. Because if you go too far over that number, then you could be liable for more taxes and more money. As it turns out, that did not happen. So that's what I consider a reasonably good end to tax season. And I was extremely happy in the afternoon. I was just like, yay, they're done, they're turned in. I filed, I paid my stupid $15 to the government. It's we're done. So anyway, that was how I spent yesterday. And by the end of it, even though I was feeling very, very, very jazzed, very excited, I was also very, very tired after doing all of that. So I did get some emails and stuff from people yesterday. And Alex says, good for you. That's amazing. Yeah, it's a game that you play, but you always have to kind of channel your accountant and be like, okay, what would they do? Because I remember sitting down with the accountant when I had business expenses. You lost me at the dreaded spreadsheet words. I hate Excel. Well, when you run your own business, and I don't have Excel, I have numbers because I have Mac, but I know what you're talking about. Same concept. But it's just, but I have to keep all of that because I have to keep all my receipts. If I get audited, I have to be able to show where this all came from. So yeah, I do keep, I can't say that I'm in there every month, like filling it in. I'm not very good at that, but I do kind of keep things saved up in email folders and other places. And then I have to go back through it and add it all up. So yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do either. I despise doing taxes actually, but it's the thing that, it's the one thing that they say is as inevitable as death, right? Death and taxes are the only things you can count on in life. So in any case, that is done. And now I can focus on my Reiki Master training class that I'm doing. And I'm doing Reiki Master on Saturday and I'm doing Reiki 1 on Sunday. So if anybody happens to randomly join in this live stream or see it who has been wanting to take Reiki 1 and lives near Milford, New Jersey, you can, and when I say Milford, I mean Milford just north of Frenchtown. There's several Milfords in New Jersey, apparently. I'm going to be giving a class there on Sunday from 10 to 4. So if there is anybody, I think most of the regulars here have either had Reiki with me or they don't live anywhere nearby. Good to know. I've learned something already. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. So it's, yeah. So in any case, I have all this kind of stuff done. And this morning, okay, so after I finished my taxes and everything, I had gotten a call from my sister. And my sister lately is, she is Virgo, and she's kind of hyper worried about everything that's going on right now. Now, again, there's kind of a line that you have to kind of draw between, yes, there are things that are very alarming that are going on in our government right now. I mean, there's no real getting around that. And there are things that could, if they are allowed to go on, could have horrific effects for just about anybody who has anything, like anybody who collects Social Security, anybody who has, all of these things. I understand people are freaking out about this, and I get that. And at the same time, it's very funny because whenever I find I try to stay away from that mind stream, but I find that if I get dragged into it to any degree, and again, it can even just happen. It can happen with clients too. I mean, people who are just, I'm scared about the future. I mean, and that's my job to try to help guide them through that. So I can't ignore it entirely. But it's not something I like to spend any time thinking about it. When you feel the pressure of the collective right now, it's like, you know, it's crazy. So, so I get why people feel that way. And at the same time, whenever I have my, you know, connection every morning, like I said, anybody who knows me knows I connect with my guides in the morning. And when I connect with Azrael in particular, he is like, he's like, just stop, like, stop worrying about it. He's like this. And okay, now the way that he explains it though, because everybody is saying here, like, they, you know, when something scary is going on, you don't want, you know, like your house is burning down and people go, oh, don't worry about that. Like, yeah, I am worried about that actually. But his response to it is it's not a word that he would use. It's not a word in the angelic language. And Joanne says, totally understand. Yeah, there's a word in the angelic language. Well, he keeps referring to it as, how did he use it? There was a couple of different phrases that he uses. Because he refers to Ialper a lot, which is the flames, which is like the burning. And we could think of that in a purification, but and Joanne just put the little flame there too. It's cute. But it's okay. But what he's saying there, I think that the term that we would use that we're more familiar with would be the term karma. Now, it's important to understand what we mean by karma, because a lot of times we think of karma in the same way that we think of judgment. Like, you know, the old, if you grow up Catholic, you know, the angel and the devil on your shoulder, and, you know, are you going to do the good thing or the bad thing? Like, I think we try to put karma kind of in that category, and that's not really what karma means. Joanne says, I get the same when you meditate. Yeah, I think it's a very common message right now. And that, yeah, I think a lot of people are hearing this. And he keeps telling me, and you'll notice a lot of people who have had readings with me recently, that the message you're getting is just wait right now. Like, just be patient with what's going on. Because because he had said, yes, I remember the phrase I got this morning. It was Giziaks Jichiska Ipons, which is, these earthquakes are not the end. Okay. These earthquakes are not the end. And so it's the idea that he said, basically, it's almost like United States is in what they call its Pluto return. And we've been in that. And Pluto return tends to be a thing that goes on. It's not something that happens for a day, because, you know, Pluto has an orbit of, goes around the sun once every 248 years. So when Pluto is in a place, it tends to move kind of slow. We're eventually moving away from that. But when that happens, it's kind of like, this is when I think all of the consequences of our actions start to emerge. Okay. Now, here's the thing. When we talk about karma, we are literally just talking about action. And sometimes karma can be non-action too. When we should act in a situation and don't, that can also breed a karma. In other words, it's literally just you do something and it has a consequence on the environment. It's not a good or a bad thing. We always talk about good karma, bad karma. I know that sometimes you'll hear teachers like gurus and things try to conceptualize it as, well, you have debits and credits in your account, you know, based on whether you've done good things or not good things. I mean, I don't even know if I like to think about it that way, but I think it's just simply, if you take any moral or ethical judgment out of it, karma is just simply you do something and it's a, you know, there's a reaction. You know, if you, I don't know, if you light a match and it's dry outside and everything catches fire, it's just kind of like, oh, you know, that's not your bad karma. It's just you performed an action that had an unfortunate consequence, right? So it's a matter of, we do things, but karma is not one of those things. I've often said karma is not like sin. Sin is the idea that the word sin comes from a Greek word that literally means to miss the mark. Okay. But it's not a term, but it's a term that you see more in New Testament Greek. It's not something you see in ancient Greek. I remember my grad school professor very clearly saying the Greeks had no concept of sin. And Alex is asking me, is a karma kind of like a trigger, like cause and effect? Kind of, yes. Although I think it's just more that what we do, it's just when we do something, something happens as a result of what we do. The way that I think the best way to think about it is in terms of relationships, okay? Because, and interestingly, we've been all told lately to focus on relationship, and we may think about, oh, well, that's my relationships with my friends or my family or my lover or whatever, you know, people around you. who might be in your life, your spouse, whomever. But it's not, it's about more than that. It's also just about your relation to the system, to the society that you're in. And you have to remember that you don't exist in isolation from that. We tend to think that we do, because we think of like, okay, politically is a good example, because it's like, okay, politically, lately it's been either you're on this side or you're on this side. Either you're right wing or you're a liberal snowflake or whatever people want to call it, right? Whatever, stupid terminology people have, but it's just, but the bottom line is just that, yeah, it's kind of like there's the two camps, and it's like they are massively at war. So when something happens, we go, well, I'm not in their camp, so it's not my responsibility. Well, no, you did not take an action that maybe contributed to the issue, but you are still part of the system. So basically, okay, what I was thinking of earlier was there's a story that Amma always tells about a Swami who is called, the family there's a death in the family, and asks them to say prayers or do puja for the family. And so when the Swami prays, it's loka samasta sukhino bhavantu, for the peace and happiness of the whole world. And they say, oh, no, well, not for my neighbor, because I don't like him. So I don't want you to pray for their happiness, just for ours. And the Swami was like, well, you can't do that. Like, if I'm praying for your you are also your neighbor. You are not different from your neighbor. And that's, I think, the way to think about the concept. We are part of the system. Now, we cannot individually be responsible for everything that happens in a system. Oftentimes, when people are trying to live an authentic existence, they go against the grain to some degree. You're trying to resist that. But even that's an action that you are taking. And in that respect, sometimes we feel like it's fruitless, right? Like, well, what's the point in fighting, because I'm not going to win anyway, right? Like, oh, it's too overwhelmingly against me. But it's the idea that you could look at it as, and again, I don't like to use light dark metaphors this way. And Alex says, I see, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, if you think about the people will say light a candle in the darkness, it may be just your candle, but then eventually if other people start lighting theirs, eventually you have enough to illuminate, because there will always be more. There's always more than just you, even if there's days when it feels like it's just you. So, and again, and I don't necessarily like to use that metaphor because it implies a goodness to light and a badness to dark, which again is not what I'm implying, but more that when it's dark, more that we can't see. We can't see what's going on, and that may lead to confusion. So, the clarity comes through more and more people kind of doing their own thing and shedding their own light. So, yeah, okay, so kind of back to this, Azrael is more or less implying that this is like a debt repayment. And what he has said is that once this, he said, because he keeps telling me, like, stop this, like, be happy, enjoy life, be pleasurable, have joy. And I'm like, well, I want to, but it's kind of hard when some of these things are going on and I just feel really exhausted by them. And he says, well, no, you need to understand that you need to take a step back and say, this is something that's happening as the result of actions. So in other words, we've had a system for a long time, and it doesn't really matter where we've fallen in a system. It has to do with our narrative as a culture. Our narrative as a culture has been, when we saw through Pluto and Capricorn, that's the negative aspect of it, where we would see, yes, we value hard work, we value productivity, we value all of these things, and none of those things, again, in and of themselves, none of those things are bad. They can become a problem when it becomes about greed, about competition, about how much can I amass for myself, and what I have gained I'm not willing to share with anybody else. There is definitely an attitude of I got mine, and anybody who needs public assistance of some kind is like, a leech or a parasite on the system. Oh, I'm willing to work, and they're not. Like, you see what I'm saying? It has to do with our entire value system. And it's so, right. So when you try to couch it in those terms, in other words, that anybody who is in need is therefore somebody who is morally defective in some way. There's going to be consequences to that. And I think what we're seeing, it's very interesting that what's going on right now is that there is what's being attacked are people, the things that people have seen as their wealth and their security. Is what. Now again, I'm not. By the way, I'm not saying what's going on is a good thing, because it's not, and it's not okay. Okay, but what's interesting is it's almost like it's playing out because, you know, this is like where people have to wake up to, do you understand why this system does not work? Do you understand why just being overly fixated on the money you have and on this and on constantly looking to the future and not living now, like why that's, you know, why that's not where you need to be. And again, we all do that. So giving, monetary or otherwise, is clearing karmic debts to a certain extent. Well, yeah, actually, and it's interesting you bring that up, Sudha, because one of the remedies I know that I've seen for Vedic astrologers bring up for certain periods of time, especially if it's an inauspicious time for things like marriage and so forth, there are just certain times of the year when they say, you know, it's better to engage in spiritual practice. And one of the things they do say is, yes, give to charity or donate your time or donate your money, like do something to share. It's about sharing. It's not so much that we have to, because you will see people who have lots of money who will donate or set up charitable trusts, but a lot of times they're just doing it because they want the tax break. They're not necessarily doing it. And then in some cases they do it and then they keep the money for themselves, which is not the way it's supposed to work, but that we have seen that happen with some people who are very prominent right now. But yeah, I mean, it's so it's also just the act of giving, really non-attached giving, which is very, very hard. I have read, there was a book, and I'm trying to think, Barbara, her last name begins with an E. I can't remember. But in any case, she had talked about the psychology of giving, because she felt like the psychology of giving a lot of the time was about people doing it because they said, well, that's what makes me a good person. Like it becomes more about, and it's not something that's given freely. It's given because people will look at me and say I'm good, you know? My mom always says feeding others is great too. Yes, absolutely. And truthfully, I can tell you there's nothing really more satisfying. I mean, the times when we would do work like in the soup kitchens and stuff like that, there's actually, in a way, there's just nothing more satisfying than being able to feed people. There's a sense of that, of being able to connect with people who don't have, and being able, you know, if you know, I remember I worked for this guy, Jim Fraser, who passed away, oh gosh, probably 10 years ago now. But he was the library director where I worked, and he's actually very, very well known in certain fields, especially antiquarian books, and he did a lot of rescuing of stuff, you know, poster art and stuff from the Soviet Union, stuff from great artists and playwrights. He was very, very big on that. But he was also a member of the Plymouth Brethren, and anybody who knows anything about Aleister Crowley, about Thelema, knows that Crowley's family was Plymouth Brethren. So he was the one who didn't have a very good opinion of Crowley, but I was like, yeah, well, his family didn't really know him that well. And it's not really a surprise that he had like very contrary values to them. But Jim was one of those people. And like I said, we got on well, and we rarely talked about religion because it was not a topic that we really agreed on in a lot of ways. But to his credit, he always read his Bible every morning, apparently. And the one thing that he would always say, because he would get things, he would get all of these treasures, and he always gave them to public institutions because he felt he was the one who was privileged enough and had the knowledge to be able to get them. He says, but these are not for me. This should be for the community. This should be for everybody. So he definitely had that point of view. And the one thing he had said was that there is a phrase in the Bible, and I can't remember exactly, I'm not gonna be able to quote you chapter, verse, or even book at this point, but the phrase is, too much, to whom much has been given, much is expected. So in other words, when you are fortunate, the idea is that you share that fortune. It goes back to that Zohar story about the difference between heaven and hell, is that, you know, the people are all there around a banquet with long-handled spoons chained to their arms, but in heaven, everybody uses them to feed each other, and then everybody is satisfied. In hell, everybody is starving because they can't reach the spoons to feed themselves. So yeah, there's definitely this idea about that, about sharing. And sharing doesn't just have to be about money. I mean, it can be about money. If you have money and you can donate money, that's a thing. But also, like I said, just your time, or just spending time with people, you know? It's just laughing here. Yeah. You know, spending time with people, you know, doing things, or just doing something for somebody. you know, it can be, that's a thing. Now that's my dadism. Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, but that is kind of the idea. I mean, a lot of it, some of it, I think sounds almost cliche, but, and again, it's not that everybody has to run out and just do things. Oftentimes I think that we build good karma. Well, I'm calling it good karma now, right? That we build that karmic credit, if you want to, by when we do things for people kind of on the spur of the moment. If you're in a place and you see somebody needs help and you just stop and help them, you know what I mean? And you're not thinking about, oh, is this person going to thank me or do something for me or give me a reward? I'm just doing it because I don't want to see another person suffer, right? Or I don't want to see, I see that that other person needs assistance. And in turn, people will assist us when we need it, hopefully. And there may be times when we feel like that's not happening. We may feel like we're totally, you know, at sea. Back to what I said about the 3 of Swords and the 5 of Pentacles. Leela. Oh, thank you. Hi, Leela. Luke 12:48. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for finding the verse for me. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Luke 12:48. Too much. Whoever's been, whoever has a too much, who has been given much. It's a weird way of saying things. Much is expected. So yeah, so that's really what we're talking about here. So okay, so back to what Azrael is saying. He is saying, look, there has been a lot of actions that have not been to the benefit of people. There have been a lot of actions that have not, and again, even if you personally did not participate in them, we are part of a system. We are part of a collective. And so in order to rebalance the collective, unpleasant things are going to happen before pleasant things happen. But his point is that at the end of all this, there is a new start. Like there is going to be, he literally keeps using the word ulchanina, which is happiness. And also mos, which is a word for joy. He uses those words a lot. And so he keeps saying, that they're bringing peace, etarzi, which is peace. That all this is going to be coming in. Because he keeps saying to me, stop worrying about what's going on right now. Now, it's also interesting because it made me think a little bit about, again, thinking back about Vedic astrology and so forth, thinking a lot about Ketu, because Ketu often has to do with the place where our karmic debts are. But it's also, Ketu has to do with our liberation. Now, Ketu is the south node, but the south node, as I said, is conceived of differently in Vedic astrology. Where the south node, it's like if you think of Rahu Ketu, which are the north and south node of the moon, as this dragon that ended up accidentally getting this elixir of immortality and then having Vishnu cut the head off. Or sometimes we have, I don't know, there seems to be different variations of that story, but the variation I read that Vishnu does this because obviously he's the preserver of the universe. And so Rahu is this head that's running around without a body. And we know what we say about the head. The head's all mind and all in ego and identity. Whereas the tail, the head's been cut off. And what we know from a lot of iconography, like when you see goddess Kali, chopping heads off, or Chinnamasta, or some of these other goddesses that remove the head, the idea is that when you see the head removed, it looks very, very peaceful, because now it's like, okay, the mind's no longer involved. The head's no longer involved. You're not, because the head is what makes you think. This is where we get into these mind games and mind traps, where we think we need more, or what we have is never enough, or where we have to start worrying about what that person thinks and compete with this person and have more than that person and this and that. Like all of that comes through the mind. So cutting the head off means like, okay, now we've gotten rid of the thing that this. I laid my coffee there. That's caused you the problem. So now, now there's just so now it's just the body. But body without a head can have an issue as well. But nonetheless, Ketu, when I went through my Ketu Mahadasha phase, which was back in around the time I divorced my husband, and Ketu, good to know. Yes, and so when I was in my Ketu phase, I was thinking back to that, and I was like, yeah, when I was in Ketu, that was when I moved out of the place I was living in with my husband, and I literally got rid of everything. I moved into a little apartment with 7 boxes. That was it. Because K2 was about being liberated from all of that stuff. And my K2 phase was actually I consider it to be, everybody says K2 is, oh, it's inauspicious. It's when, you know, you don't have as much and you don't have this and that. Like we think about it again in those very material terms, that having lots of money and abundance and everything is the key to happiness, but it often isn't. And so what I found during my K2 phase, which was when I met my guru actually, and that's when I got very heavily into Kali Puja during that time, which is actually entirely appropriate. It was, the idea was just that you are liberated from the need to have all this stuff. Like your happiness doesn't come from just continually consuming and acquiring, or feeling like, you know, even, or not having gratitude for what you have, right? We always have this attitude of what we're doing is not going to prepare us enough for the future, or it's not going to be enough. Now, interestingly, I'm actually about to go into Venus K2 on the spring equinox, just after the spring equinox, I think. I am due to go into Venus K2, and I've been in Venus Mercury for a while. And then I'm going to move into my sun phase. And now it's funny, the first Vedic astrologer I ever went to said, well, when you enter your sun phase, people actually like start reading your books and looking at stuff en masse. I said, oh, good. I got just another year then before people start noticing what I'm actually doing. But Venus K2, I thought about that because they say, oh, that can be very inauspicious. It means that you don't. And I'm like, no, it's going to be in a way. And with Venus, because Venus is about the material acquisition of stuff and the way in which we do that. But this is about, K2 is about divesting yourself of that. And so here I'm thinking about it. I said, yeah, here I am once again, emptying my house out and getting rid of everything because I'm about to make another big life change. That's going to be more about, working one-on-one with people, you know, in person. And yeah. And for me to make the kind of move that I want to make means I have to almost give up everything. And I was like, wow, that's just, to me, it's just so interesting because it's not like I looked at my chart and said, oh, it's Venus K2, it's time for me to do this. It just seems to naturally flow into that. But K2 to me has a lot to do with liberation because there's a freedom from this cycle of being chained to the idea of needing all this crap. And, you know, I mean, yeah, it's not that things aren't nice and aren't nice to have. And, you know, we're not denigrating the material world here. But we can decide that that's all there is to it. That's the only, that acquiring and having nice stuff is the only thing that's valuable in life. And I think I talked a little bit about that yesterday, about how when we play the game, you know, they really, when it becomes too individualistic, and Sudha says, wow, that's super interesting. Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I just find that, this is, I guess, one of the lessons I've certainly had as a Taurus, because like I said, I used to work 14-hour days. I mean, I had good money coming in, but the thing is, I was exhausted all the time and never had time. It wasn't until COVID, when nobody could go anywhere and do anything, that I actually had time to do my job and also work on other things, because I wasn't spending half my life driving 8 million places. But since I quit my job and decided, no, I have to figure this out on my own, yeah, it's not an easy journey. It's very hard to break the mindset that, well, if I'm not making X dollar figure a year, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to be successful. Or yes, even if I am making that, but you know, I have to build up a big retirement. I have to have this. I've already spent most of my retirement. I still have a pension, but I've you know, which I'm not eligible for until I think 55, 56. So got a couple more years, but it's, but yeah, I mean, literally the 401k, I mean, I had to pay the penalties on it, but I spent it on something I really wanted to do, which was to go overseas. So the way I look at it is now, when I'm looking at everybody going, oh no, what's going to happen to my 401k and stuff, I'm kind of like, I'll have one. I don't have to worry about that. I mean, again, this is not just about me. I realize other people have things to worry about. And honestly, I think people who have things like that, there is going to be, I don't think all of this business that's going on right now, even if steps are taken, I think a lot of this is temporary. And like I said, I think we are going to get back to where, well, I don't think we're necessarily going to go back, but I think we're going to do things differently. But really, this is why it's kind of like there's the individual versus the community, and that being connected to your community is part of what we need for happiness. And right now, when we feel like, you know, people with different opinions are somehow the enemy, and when we feel that, like I said, I think if you're not fond of this current administration, and I can tell you that I'm definitely not, then to me, regardless, the whole idea is just, you know what, forget about that. Just worry. They're kind of there. I always feel like everything's an instrument of the universe. There's a bigger force that drives everything. And again, that doesn't mean that I think that they should be there, but it's just, but there's something there. There's some kind of method to the madness that's not clear to us, that we don't see. And we just have to recognize that we're going with the flow, that things are kind of in a decline, and that things will go up again. It's in a decline, it will come back up again, maybe in a different way. And that might be a good thing, because maybe this is helping us wake up to refocus on our neighbor and on the community. If you want to go back to the Bible again, I say to you, love your neighbor as yourself. And again, I'm not trying to be biblical. That's not necessarily the milieu that I come from, but it is a truth. Morals and values are tested in difficult times, is what Suda's saying. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's going on right now. It's kind of like we're really, I keep seeing Grand Cross cards in the astrology cards, which is like, you're really being pushed. You're really being pushed to see, what is it that you really value? What is it? Because a lot of us have wounds around either money or around productivity. I think that I've seen a lot of like Chiron and Aries, Chiron and Taurus. You can have a lot of wounds around that in people's charts. And this is where we need to, it's time to heal those wounds. It's time to heal those wounds and be real. When we talk about being realistic, it's not realistic about everything is terrible. It's realistic about what do you actually need to be happy? What do you actually need for your life? What do we actually need versus what we've been told that we need, or that we, in our minds, we've decided we kind of have this ongoing future paranoia that maybe we don't need something, that we, how can I put that, okay, you're doing great now, but in the future you won't be, like there's always that kind of fear, because the bottom line is things can change at any time. And that's Uranus and Taurus. Taurus is very stable and practical, and it's like, and it's all just like, it's like, it's just all been absolute chaos. So yeah, so I don't know. So the idea of karma came up, and so the sense is just almost like, okay, yeah, there's some kind of what they're saying in the bigger picture, there seems to be some kind of debt that's being paid, okay, and that it's not going to be going on for years and years and years. Once this debt is paid, and I think that is going to happen within the year, then it's like, okay, then that's where we see all these other planets, Uranus and Gemini. We're going to be seeing, the kind of buildup that's going to be happening from the spring equinox till about September. I mean, there's so many aspects. I don't even know if I could name them all. Uranus and Gemini immediately comes to mind, but Venus is also going to be connected to Uranus and Gemini, which is actually a good thing, because that's something that has the potential to bring more abundance, to bring more things. So we're getting right in our relationship with stuff and our relationship with technology. And those are the things that we need to look at. So yeah, our center card here is the Master. Speaking of gurus, right? The Master card is not a regular card in tarot. This is one of the extras. I think I've mentioned in tarot class that sometimes we have extra cards. They'll throw an extra card into a regular tarot deck. And this is one of them. The Master card basically it suggests that there's a master at work somewhere. That there's some kind of guidance here, that if we think about the function of a guru, an authentic guru, that person is there to guide you to the realization of your own truth, right? And of the truth of the way things are. So it's almost like, yeah, we're all being guided to see what's true. The inner feeling, and Suda says, wow, yeah. The thing that we're unaware of this is the Seven of Pentacles. Patience. I have to be patient. Oh my goodness, I just noticed there are 3 sevens in this reading. 777. It's Babylon, right? But we have 3 sevens here, and 7 energy is that, because remember 5 energy is kind of that struggle, And then the 6 is kind of like, okay, we've moved out of the struggle to this kind of a little bit more peaceful and reflective place, or we've let things go and move forward. And now we're facing kind of this other set of challenges before we hit the 8 and the 9 energy and so forth. Because the external feeling of which we are aware is politics. 7 of Swords. Okay, so internally, 7 of Pentacles. We know that there's a need to be patient, but it's something right now that we're not aware that this is a cycle, and we're also not aware that this cycle is about to come to an end. I mean, this card shows a pregnant woman. So yeah, well, you know, I've never been pregnant, but I know perfectly well that when a woman is pregnant, that that can be, especially towards the end, before you're ready to give birth, that is the most difficult period of time. And I think we've used this kind of metaphor before, so I feel some people on here are going to be like, yeah, how long are we going to be in labor? Like, for how long? Like, but collectively as a society, it's something we have to be patient with. Now, when we get the 7 of Swords, externally, we know that there's thievery. We know that there might be dirty dealings. We know that there's secrets or things that are going on that we're not seeing. Okay, and that's what and it's funny that it's called politics, because it does feel like there is 7 of Swords. I feel like also has to do with the things that we're not expecting because we're not looking for them. It's in the cat deck, it's the one with the cat. The cat's looking up at all the birds, but doesn't see the mouse that's running behind him. So if he's looking for prey, the cat behind him comes in and takes it away. So we feel like 7 of Swords is a very tricky energy. Heartburn time. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. For Suda saying that about being pregnant, right? But it's. But politics, yeah. I mean, this is about, we know that, you know, someone's doing some shady dealing, right? We're aware of it, although, but it's also something that's a harder thing to confront because it's not direct. It feels very indirect, right? And this is causing stress. Okay, now we have the 7 of Wands. Like I said, there's 3 7s here. Stress. And there's the person who's trying to do it all, and the monkey that's about to pop the balloon. And this gets back to our ideas about productivity, about something happening. Wait, I got to hurry up and do something. I got to do it. I got to do it all now. I got to fix it all now. And this is saying, you know, if you're running around trying to do all of this, you know, you have the little monkey here that's going to pop the balloon, and you fall straight down. This has to do with, and the meaning of this card in the Osho Zen deck is just do something unimportant. Just do something unimportant, because, you know, so-called unimportant, because all the things that we're rushing around doing that we think are important, that we all have to juggle. Oh, I must do this and I have to do that. And yeah. Sometimes we may find that that's not true. And it's very hard to get away from the mindset. I should notice too that the 7 of Swords can also be a card of self-sabotage. So sometimes it's a card that comes up when we are, when we have sabotaged ourselves into thinking we can't do something a certain way. It's like, well, oh, but of course I have to do it this way because that's what a responsible adult does, and this is how you have to plan, and this is part of the thing. I said if I engaged an accountant, the accountant would think I was a psychopath. They'd be like, "What's wrong with you? Why do you not have this? How could you spend through that?" I said, "Well, I'm doing what I feel I need to do right now, you know." And by the way, I'm not giving anybody any financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do with anything. I'm actually the last person you should listen to on that point. But I have. You know, but the thing I'm doing, it was just really interesting because as I was thinking it, I was like, oh no, I need to make sure I leave this much money. And I literally got the message of that, and don't worry about it. You know, you'll get it back at some point. Don't worry about it. Okay, you know. So yeah, but I think that this is bringing to head a lot of this fear that people have around, is my security all going to be taken away? And that's what we're all being challenged on right now. Well, what does your security rest on? You know, what do you value? What does your security rest on? And what would happen if you just let yourself enjoy life and live every day? I'm not saying I necessarily, I preach that. I'm not sure. And I know I'm frequently have to be re-instructed by the angels. They're like, you know, this thing we told you about stopping being angry, stop being this, you know, just kind of. So yeah, I need to practice what I preach basically. But our outcome card, and that's our friend Mabel here, the turtle. Yeah, slowing down. So, okay, so many of you will know that we're all being told to slow down right now. You don't need to run around in circles. Just slow down, reconnect, ground, think about what you're doing, and be content to just kind of stand still for now. Actually, this is interesting because I see this in a lot of readings for people lately, is this whole thing of just just wait. Passivity can be a virtue as well as action. And a lot of times when we're uncomfortable, we become restless. We're like, well, I got to move. I got to do something. And this is saying, just wait and see how things go. Don't project that, oh, this is happening now, therefore the outcome is going to be this. Kind of like, just chill. So, yep. And there you go. Suda has little turtles there. And Joanne too, yes. Actually, the maple thing actually is Joanne's original idea from the intuitive development class. So so that's what we have here for you today. So anyway, we're a quarter past, so I'm going to move on for the day. And tomorrow, I'm trying to think if I'm going to be on tomorrow. Do I have time to be on tomorrow? Because the thing is, I'm teaching. Well, no, I'm not teaching actually my Reiki class till the evening. So yes, I will be on tomorrow. Sunday's the day that I have in question in my mind. So tomorrow, yes, I'll be back for a morning coffee tomorrow if you guys want to join me. I hope you have a great Friday. Happy Friday, good week, good start to your weekend. And I will catch up with all of you tomorrow, if not sooner. So take care.